wish you a Merry Christmas. That's not how you thought I was going to start, is it, Sid?
No. No.
Okay, well, anyway, we hope you all had a lovely Christmas. Sid's a little bit of a Scrooge/Grinch, and I am really into Christmas. So we've had a lovely time, and hope you all have too. This is our annual year review vodcast, isn't it, Sid? It's become a little bit of a tradition that we do this now.
We do it every year. We do it. The kitchen gets transformed into a TV studio. The cat gets terrified of, why are you moving all of this stuff? She's just gone out into the garden, so she'll probably appear at some point.
Okay. We're going to title this vodcast 2019 A Strange Year, because it has been a bit of an odd year. Why has it been... we were sort of talking about it before we started filming the podcast. Why has it been a strange year, Sid?
Well, it's been an odd year in that there's been a little bit less in the international calendar than there sometimes is. We've got a situation with the World 2020 every 2 years and then the World Cup every 4 years where most years, 3 out of 4 years, there's a big international tournament. And there obviously wasn't one this year for the first time since 2015. We did have the Women's Ashes to kind of partly make up for that, so that was exciting. So it was partly no global tournament, but also with things coming to an end and other things not starting yet. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the things that are starting next year later, but we've had it's the end of the County Championship. We've got a little bit of a hangover next year of the County T20 Cup continuing. Basically, the end of the County Championship, the end of the Kia Super League, and it feels like those ends are coming without a beginning having quite happened yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess a bit of a sad year for lots of people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I say, it's difficult to kind of get the enthusiasm for the new things yet. I mean, I'm sure that will come next year, but at the moment, it just feels like all those ends with no beginnings in sight.
Okay, let's start off by thinking about the internationals. It's been a bit of an up and down year for England, hasn't it? And that's another reason why it makes it a little bit of a strange year and a hard one to categorise in some ways.
Yeah, England started off with a couple of defeats to India in the ODI series. They went 2-0 down in that. And then following that, we actually had a remarkable, was it a 14-game unbeaten run that followed that as we won the last ODI, 3 T20s there. We won ODIs and T20s in Sri Lanka. We thrashed the West Indies. And England were obviously then feeling a bit of a high. They were feeling they could really take some momentum into the Ashes. And then that momentum kind of into a wall called Elise Perry. And another wall called Meg Lanning, and a few other walls. So that was a little bit of a downer. And then England obviously come back in Kuala Lumpur in the autumn and thrash Pakistan, which I guess we'd expect them to do. But again, it's that's the graph of England's year has kind of zipped up and down a bit.
And you were saying the other day, I'm going to steal your line, that perhaps we started the year thinking that England were vying for first place with Australia, but they're actually really, we feel like they're maybe vying for second place with India now in terms of the global rankings. Yeah,
there was certainly, I mean, at the point where the Women's Ashes was starting off, there was the usual hype around the Women's Ashes, and with England's unbeaten run, I think that England believed that they were closer to Australia than the score in the Women's Ashes suggested. They felt reasonably confident, the players going into that series, but they were nowhere near Australia, and it's definitely shown, I think, that the real battle at the top of the table is actually between are India the challengers for second place, or are England still holding on to their second place? And that's probably going to be the big question of the next year. It's not going to be can anyone catch Australia, because even if Australia don't win the global tournament next year, they're still going to come out of next year looking like the best side by a country mile, I would think.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a fluke if that did happen, I think. And what was your favourite international moment of the year, Sid?
Well, I really enjoyed seeing Freya Davis bowling against Pakistan in Kuala Lumpur over the last few weeks. Sometimes when players get promoted to, and I know that Freya had made her debut actually much earlier in the year in the Sri Lanka series, but we hadn't had the chance to watch that because it wasn't broadcast. So it kind of felt like that was the first time that we'd seen her play for England. And sometimes when players play their first matches for England, you look at the gulf in quality between England and county cricket, and you think, oh my goodness, there is a big gulf. It's a big step up. But what was so great about Freya's debut or her performance against against Pakistan was that, she made that golf look small. She came out and she bowled exactly the same, high degree of consistency, line and length, putting the ball on a sixpence that we've seen from her in the Kia Super League, and she made that gap look small, and that was very gratifying to see. And I think that that's going to be really great for England as a signal that she can not only be a player that's now played for England, but will be a player that in 10 years' time will be looking back, having presented with her 150th cap for England.
Okay. Are you going to ask me what my favourite international moment was?
No, Raf, you can ask yourself that.
Raf, what was your favourite international moment of the year?
Well, Raf, no, sorry, no, that's you. Sorry.
Okay, mine's a bit of a funny one actually, and maybe I'll get some comeback from this. But I think that my favourite international moment was Heather Knight's declaration at Taunton. I think it felt like the only point in the Women's Ashes where England were able to actually seize back some initiative from Australia. And it felt like it was the thing that we really wanted Heather Knight to do and England to do, to show some fight. And they kind of struggled to do that throughout the series. But actually that moment when Heather said, we're going to declare behind and we're going to, it was almost, she was putting the impetus, or that she was putting the ball back in Meg Lanning's court, and she was saying, we are going to give you a chance as a team to have a clean sweep in this series and to win the test. But in order for you to do that, to take that chance, you've got to give us a chance to win as well. And as it turned out, Meg Lanning bottled it and didn't give them that chance. And that was really disappointing. And there was the documentary that's recently been broadcast, and they were apparently filming in the Australian dressing room. And Meg Lanning said, I don't think that we should give England the chance to win. And she went round and asked all the players, and none of them said that they wanted to give England a chance except for Alyssa Healy, which is very telling actually about the kind of player that Alyssa Healy is, that she was the one that really wanted to take the fight to England. And I had a lot of respect for her before that, despite the fact that I wrote this infamous piece about her being a pantomime villain. But I've got even more respect for her now, because I think that was the right thing, and it was the right thing for them as a team, to be honest, to be able to say, well, we've won the test, and it was also the right thing for women's test cricket. So, but that moment when Heather Knight declared, and you just thought, hang on a minute, this is England really taking the fight back to Australia. It just really felt quite an exciting moment, a moment that breathed life into what was becoming a bit of a dead match.
Yeah, and as you say, it's just unfortunate that Meg Lanning then smothered it again. But, that was her prerogative, I guess. But I still think that from a sort of, from an England fan's perspective, and I suspect from a neutral fan's perspective, that was unfortunate.
Any other standout moments of the year, Sid?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've kind of had a bit of a downer on Meg Lanning there, but her century in the T20 at Chelmsford was just, a dominant piece of cricket, and it was so obvious so early on where that was going, that by the time we were sort of 4 overs in, we were already, looking at the record books and seeing, is she going to break her own record here? And it just felt there was a degree of inevitability about it. And that performance was probably the standout individual performance, that we've seen in cricket at all for a couple of years, maybe since Harmanpreet's century in the World Cup against Australia. It was just an awesome piece of cricket, and it showed what a dominant player, how Meg Lanning just stands over the game at the moment.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, we'd agree with that. Okay, let's move on now to thinking about the domestic season. So first of all, starting off with the Women's County Championship and the Women's County T20 Cup as well. Do you want to have a go at summarising that for us, Sid?
Well, the County Championship can really be summarised in one word: Kent. They were very dominant in the 50 over County Championship. I think I underestimated them slightly in my previews, partly because I didn't think they'd have their England players for quite as much. I thought the England players might get pulled out of training camps and things, and leave them without England players for the last 2 or 3 rounds, and that wasn't the case in the end. And with those players like Tammy Beaumont and Laura Marsh, and Fran Wilson in particular, played really well, and nobody else had a chance. So I watched Katie George bowling to Fran Wilson in a match in Kent, and Katie George was bowling quickly. She was perhaps arguably bowling a little bit short, but she was looking in good form, and yet Fran Wilson was just swatting her to all sides of the ground, and that kind of summed up the County Championship for me. Kent swatting everyone else to all sides of the ground.
Okay, and then in the T20 Cup, Warwickshire won their first women's county title,
Yeah.
which was actually really really nice to see because they are such a lovely side, and I guess probably credit to Laura McLeod who's kind of come into the setup and seems to have made an impact there. So yeah, that's been great to see.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a change in Warwickshire. We've seen a kind of the professional attitude starts to come through there, and Warwickshire definitely have stepped up. And players, that 2 years ago looked like batsmen or bowlers now look like cricketers. With good all-round performances, the fielding has improved a lot. And that guys, that's what happens when you employ a full-time coach with a track record like Laura's.
Okay. Yeah. And then we also had the last ever Kia Super League, which a bit sad in many ways, knowing that it was coming to an end. I think that actually I was really impressed with the way that the players and I guess the staff around that tournament really gave it their all, despite knowing that they were going to be ultimately out of jobs once the tournament had finished. So they really did kind of step up, and we saw some really amazing cricket in the KSL. Really exciting finals day. Another good crowd at Hove. Possibly, perhaps inevitably, Western Storm moved towards their second KSL title. Did that feel inevitable to you, Sid?
I'm not sure it felt totally inevitable at the time. In that, definitely going into the final, that you thought that the Southern Vipers had a good chance. They'd had a good win in the semi-final, and you're not going to discount any side with the likes of Susie Bates and Danny Wyatt and Tammy Beaumont in it. Tammy Beaumont did a good job captaining the side, but when it actually got to the final, particularly when the Western Storm were batting, that was all about Heather Knight, and Heather Knight has been so consistent throughout the life of the Super League, and that was her final. She played another consistent innings, and she absolutely made sure of it in a sort of that dogged fashion that she has. It's not spectacular. She's not, she's not really quite a fireworks player, but when she's in the mood, she's, you don't want to get in her way. And, the Southern Vipers got in her way and they got flattened.
And what was your favourite domestic moment of the year?
Well, it wouldn't be Sid on a Cricket Her podcast without mentioning Lauren Bell. Lauren Bell's ball to Rachel Priest in the Super League that bowled Priest was just, I just loved it, and I wrote an entire piece about one ball because it's just about what she's capable of. There are plenty of bowlers that are capable of delivering good spells, but what Lauren's capable of doing, even at she's still young, she's still only 19. Just 19, I believe. She'd been 18 last year, I think. And she's capable of delivering that magic ball that can get even the best batsman in the world completely flummoxed and turning around looking, how did that even happen? And I'm so excited to see how she develops over the next couple of years, and as she I hope inevitably becomes an England player. What about you?
Well, I just realised that this is a bit Southern Vipers centric, which doesn't reflect any bias at all. But it was Danny Wyatt's 100 at Arundel, and I remember prior to that that morning we weren't quite sure which match we were going to go to. But good call in the end, because it was such a delight to see that 100 live and in the flesh. And what was amazing about it actually is that I got to interview Danny afterwards, and she batted so beautiful, it looked quite effortless to me. But she just said, "Oh no, I never really felt in the whole time." And yeah, that's kind of a bit Danny Wyatt, isn't it? She rides her luck and she takes her chances, and she has fun while she does it. And she didn't mind admitting that she hadn't felt in the groove, but she looked like she was really in the groove. So an interesting innings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we've seen quite a lot of retirements this year. Danny Hazel back towards the start of the year, and then more recently a bit of a series with Jenny Gunn, Sarah Taylor and Laura Marsh. And of course we've also seen the end of Mark Robinson as England coach. It does really feel like 2020 is the start of a new era, I guess the Lisa Kiteley era, but also a kind of new cast of England cricketers. what do we think about England's chances, for instance, at the World T20, which is the first big event of 2020?
Um, well, I'm going to say something slightly contradictory here. I think that England are probably in a better place now than they were at the World 2020 in the Caribbean. So I think that England are probably in a better position to challenge Australia. But I also think that Australia will really be kicking themselves very hard if they don't win this tournament quite easily. There really shouldn't be anybody to touch Australia, and if they don't win it, it's because something's gone horribly wrong in a one-off game, perhaps in the semi-final, and that lets somebody else through the door. But I think that especially once we get to the final, I think that if Australia make the final and they don't win it, it will be a major, major upset, whoever challenges them. But having said that, on their day, anyone could do it. New Zealand could do it. New Zealand have got the superstars. Sophie Devine had a brilliant WBBL. She's not going to be afraid of walking out into those big Australian grounds. Susie Bates can still turn it on, if she turns it on at the right moment. And then England, of course, will have their challengers, as will India. So any one of those sides could win it. Even potentially South Africa could do so. Especially if South Africa were to, say, beat Australia in the semi-final and then, I guess, give themselves a bit of an easier final, you wouldn't necessarily, bet all your money against South Africa either. So I think it should be an exciting tournament. I think that England will challenge, but I think that you can't look past Australia. And if you've got money and you aren't putting it on Australia, then, you're putting it on a long shot, I think.
Cricket Australia, in a way, have taken a gamble with this. We're going to sell out the MCG thing as well. I know, obviously, they've got Katy Perry on board now, and Sid's been brushing up on all his Katy Perry knowledge. Sid, would you like to share your favourite Katy Perry song with us?
No.
Okay. But he has been spending, many, many minutes and hours listening to Katy Perry songs, so we're really excited. Anyway, what was I saying? Cricket Australia taking a bit of a gamble, saying they're going to sell out the MCG, and I was actually struck by Megan Shute did an interview with Lisa Slaker that I think was on the ICC website just before Christmas, and she actually openly admitted that she's basically saying if we, Australia, don't get to the final, then we've lost our chance at selling out the MCG. So Cricket Australia have kind of gambled everything on Australia getting to the final. And I think that they are likely to, but if they don't, then potentially could be a bit of a tricky one in terms of getting a sellout.
Yeah, maybe the people won't turn up in quite such huge numbers. I think that people are likely to buy tickets in advance, and even if it is, say, New Zealand v India or England v South Africa, then there's still, we're still going to get a very large crowd, but probably won't get the sellout because I guess that a lot of people will give it a pass.
Okay, and then domestic cricket in 2020. We kind of did vaguely mention this earlier, and I guess the real thing of kind of the real issue is that we don't know what's happening, and people keep asking us what's happening, and it's difficult because when the ECB did their huge launch in October of their new strategy, all bells and whistles, and very exciting, Claire Connor said, all the new centres of excellence will be up and running by November. They will have all their staff, won't necessarily have all the players attached to them, but they'll be up and running, and we'll have names, and we'll know the brands, and we'll know everything like that, and we'll know a lot more information and details. And obviously it's now the 31st of December, and we don't really know anything more than we really did back in October, do we?
No, it's true. We don't know a lot, and I think that I'm starting to feel a bit concerned that the ECB have perhaps bitten off a bit more than they can chew. That they're taking on the 100, and the 100 is probably the biggest project that the ECB have ever embarked on. They're creating this whole thing from scratch, and they pretty much, while the idea is a little older, they pretty much didn't really start actually doing anything until last summer. That gave them a year to do this huge project, and they want to hit the ground running with it. They don't want it to start off small. They desperately need to start off big. So they put all their resources into that, and when you're doing that, then other things probably do get a bit left behind. And it does seem that the Centres of Excellence project is not where they wanted it to be, and I have to admit, I'm starting to wonder if we'll get to next September and they will quietly run another county championship in September because the Centres of Excellence won't be ready. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the only certainty right now is we do have a schedule for the Women's County T20 Cup. So we know that that's going to happen. We don't have any dates for the England internationals either. We do have some dates for the 100 as well. So, you know, the certainties are, what is it, life, death, and the 100 and the T20 County Cup will happen. As to anything else, who knows? And on that note, Happy New Year. Thank you for all the support in 2019. We really appreciate it. And we hope you have a good one.
Take care. Thank you.
P.S. If you're interested in the history of women's cricket, if you're interested in me, then do come along to my book launch, which is happening on Wednesday the 22nd of January at 7 p.m. It's being held at the Union Jack Club, which is in London next to Waterloo Station, in conjunction with the Cricket Society. I'll be talking about the book, and there may be the odd famous face from women's cricket history rocking up, and it will be great to see you there.